Okay, here we have a match against a classic Leyline of the Void scam deck. This is a bit different from the other matches we have up on the channel, up against a Hearst build. I thought it'd be important to try out Leyline of the Void, just because I do think that it should differ how you sideboard a little bit. I was caught a little bit off guard by the Hearst deck, and I don't think that's the classic list you're gonna see. But if it is, I'll have a plan written up on the Patreon for how to board against that Hearst deck, because I think that you want to change up a little bit how you're sideboarding. Maybe DRC is still better than Ragavan in that matchup. But anyways, getting into this, so we do win the die roll and we're on the play. This hand is pretty great. Ragavan turn 1 probably will require a fatal push. I guess the other argument is what if they grief scam us? So if we play Ragavan turn 1 and they grief scam us, it's okay. We get to hit with Ragavan. We also have, we'll be left with the Preordain at least, which could find something. Yeah, I think that playing the Ragavan turn 1 because we're on the play here is just the best move. If they have their own Ragavan or Fatal, if they don't have Fatal Push, basically, this goes really well for us. So yeah, I guess a key heuristic here, on the play against Scam, because they no longer have Fury, they're normally on 4 outs to Ragavan turn 1, and playing a turn 1 Ragavan is going to be pretty effective, especially if you can back it up with counters, like Stern Scolding or Counterspell. But even if you just, get that one hit in, there's still a good chance you could hit a Thoughtseize, a Bowmasters, a Fable on 2. Lots of really good hits that would be beneficial for you even before. So they take Preordain, which tells me they don't want us looking for a Counterspell or something, which has me expecting Bowmasters. Alright, so I'll just play this Flight Strain and pass. Probably going to get Bowmasters here, unfortunately. I guess we got our treasure out of it. But... and they're going to smartly do the Bowmasters in our upkeep. I would fetch the Surveil land here if we had it in our deck, but... I guess we could use the Otawara to rebuy Ragavan, but I don't think it's really worth it because we still have to get through the 2 Bowmaster tokens. I'd rather probably just give up on Ragavan. So close, but yet so far. I think let's go ahead and bolt this Bowmasters now so that we don't fall into any Undying traps. Knowing about the Spell Pierce is kind of unfortunate for us, because that means they're not going to jam a Fable into it. I do think that this Counterspell in our hand will be a surprise, simply because we Dothy Voidwalker. And we should Unholy Heat that. I generally find it better to hold your counters and Unholy Heat, just because the Counterspell could protect our Murktide in the future or something like that. Alright, and I'm happy to get a Shredder down here. They didn't have push earlier, but they could have drawn it. A Hardcast Grief would be good. Hardcast Shield Druid, also good, but we do have the Counterspell. The Spell Pierce is losing relevance, but we'll hope to draw a Preordain or an Expressive Iteration that can help us trigger and get rid of this Pierce. Another Bird Lawyer. Interesting. Okay. Grief takes away our spell pierce. Now we're in a pure racing situation. 4 versus our 2. Oh man, we drew the nuts though. Wow. I am very lucky. I am very lucky. I'm holding on to this iteration over basically everything. My biggest fear at this point is Shieldred. I think otherwise we're winning this game. Every once in a while, Murktide deck turns up a good top deck. I do think that like a Murktide Regent also would have been very good there to draw, unless they have the Molten Collapse in hand already, which is possible. Alright, not afraid of the Fable anymore. I guess if it's partnered with a Fatal Push, it could make things interesting. Now this is interesting. We're definitely going to exile and play the Bauble. The question is, does Stern Scolding do anything here? My thought is we could... I think we're supposed to take Murktide Regent because we have 2 Bauble loots where we could find an untapped land, and the Murktide would probably seal the game for us. And I don't think that we're actually very afraid of any non... Okay, wait, is this... It's not lethal, so let's just still discard the land to start. Counterspell. I guess we discard the counterspell then. We have Bowmasters on top. The draw from the Bauble is a DRC. So this bolt likely wants to go face because we have 2 lethal threats here. Alright, and we win that one. Alright, so post board, we know they have 3 Leylines. And I want to bring in these and this. I guess the question is, what's the last card? So I think what we want to do is cut down on DRCs because of Leylines. Do we want any cast into the fires? Let me see the official list. So they're going to have access to potentially Hidetsugu consumes all 3 Leyline of the Voids. Those are the only cards that it really looks like they would want to bring in. Maybe 2 Kolaghan's commands, but I wouldn't expect that. And the cards they could cut, I could see cutting the Bone Crusher Giant makes sense to cut. Maybe like shaving a Not Dead After All. But I guess on the play, you probably are still pretty interested in Grief Scamming, especially because I don't have Subtlety in my list. Yeah, it doesn't seem like Cast Into the Fire is really that good. I think we'll just keep 1 DRC in. Bring in the 2 Stern Scoldings and the Brotherhood's End. We'll go with that. Some Murktide players have been mapping it so that they have 2 Brotherhood's Ends, and their plan is to be on like a Ledger Shredder control post board against Leyline of the Void. I don't see a ton of merit in that, but alright, this hand is interesting. I say every hand is interesting. That's the secret. Interesting hands. Bad against Grief Scam, so is most hands, but pretty bad against, very exceptionally bad against Grief Scam. Supposed to be stuck with a Ragavan and 4 lands. Bad against Bowmasters. Bad against basically everything. Like, I just don't think this hand can ever be a keep, unfortunately. On the play, it's much, much better because the Ragavan does something. But on the draw, the Ragavan is pretty close to doing nothing. So I think we're supposed to mulligan. Alright, I'll keep this, and I think I'm going to put Ragavan on the bottom of my deck. Again, Ragavan doesn't do very much. No Leyline is put into play. We are getting Grief Scammed. Okay, well this hand I think is somewhat resilient to Grief Scam. I guess they have to take Bolt and probably Murktide, but they could also take Bolt and Preordain. Another spot where, like, if they do take the Preordain here, would love to have the Surveil land in my deck. I keep saying pointing out there's a lot of spots to play the Surveil land or to fetch it and get value. I think what remains to be seen is, I guess, what can we cut to have the Surveil land, right? That's a big question, so we need to figure that out. I don't think you can really cut untapped red sources. But I do see a lot of value in that Surveil land. Like here, hitting a second land is so huge. If we could fetch a tapped land and then from that Surveil, it's just like a huge, huge deal. Because every draw step that's not a land is gonna like put us in really bad shape here. Not good. This is a really good start from the Scam player. I think if we don't hit like a Bolt here, we're all but doomed. If we do hit a Bolt, we can Bolt the Grief. Or the... Okay. I think that's too late, but... Maybe if we draw like Brotherhood's End, we can clean everything up. Well, just taking 7 and then... Yeah, no, that's going to be too slow. Okay, we are done. Grief Scam, stay scamming. Keep in mind, like, if we had got the Surveil land, we mill over the Bauble, draw Steam Vents, shock Steam Vents. We still were probably going to be dead, but maybe not. With those cards on top, we would have been dead. Now this is a hand where I will be very happy if my opponent puts Leyline of the Void into play on turn 1. Because it's just going to be -1 card while we go Ragavan into Shredder Bauble. And it kind of shows the appeal of keeping Ragavan in over DRC. Ragavan like has to be pushed and then the Shredder's going to survive. Alright, well they don't have it anyways, so... One thing I always check for is, like, on the play, okay, do we have a Stern Scolding that we want to hold up for, like, a Grief Scam? But We don't. Holding up the bolt does nothing, so definitely just... It's 100% play Ragavan here. And I expect, we get pushed, and then next turn we play the Shredder and make it 2-4, probably. Though I think looting away a land is also pretty defensible, so we don't start to flood. Now I kind of want to loot away the counter spell, with the plan being like they play a 2-drop next turn and we go Shredder Bolt. I guess if they play Bowmasters, that doesn't work very well. Having the second Shredder makes me think we can get rid of lands later. I'll get rid of Counterspell here. This could be a bit of a risky play, to be fair. Maybe just ditching the second Shredder is best there. They did mulligan, so we could have just tried to attrition them, and Counterspell takes away a lot of their like powerful 4-drop plays or 2-drop, 3-drop plays that give them a lot of value. But my thought was more that like I think we're in reasonable racing shape here. Okay, we're not yielded. Alright, Leyline of the Void on top. Not gonna be... He's in paper, you bobble and you gotta keep a poker face. Who knows what card they have on top. I don't know why I bobbled because they targeted the bobble. Which is actually, it made sense for them to target the bobble. It forces me to use it now, and I did want to save it to use with a fetch. And then they grief us. Interesting. Maybe their thought is they just can't beat a Murktide here, but this puts them down to 2 cards. We're going to have 4. And they're drawing Leyline of the Void, so I think they're going to regret that. I guess we can start by bobbling ourselves. I think we want to preordain first. Okay, let's think about this for a second. This felt like they're afraid of specifically Murktide, so I'm going to presume that they don't have Molten Collapse in hand, or there's like no reason to make this play here. So Murktide is really good. Now if we bobble ourselves and then fetch first, we get slightly better odds at finding Murktide. If we preordain first and then bobble check ourselves after, then we're resetting. So I think the bobble first is better. The awkward thing is, yeah, something like Stern Scolding does get kind of awkward. Are we supposed to preordain next turn now? Probably. Let's probably just find a way to turn on the preordain. Wait, did we? No, we didn't know about a Bowmasters, but they could have had one here. That definitely could have been one of the cards in the range. Alright, I'd fetch my Surveil land here to dig for Murktide. Oh, they do have Bowmasters. Interesting. Even though we do have this counterspell, I don't think we want either of these lands. The real punish, I guess, is if they draw a land, if they have Fable as their other card besides the Leyline of the Void. But otherwise, I don't think it's that essential for us to hold up counterspell here, and I'd rather dig towards spells. Plus, we could just literally draw another land below. So we definitely want this iteration on top. The question is, do we also want the counterspell? If they do stick something, it could put us on the back foot, but otherwise we're definitely on the front foot. So it's like exactly land fable, I think, is what we're mostly afraid of here. I can't think of anything else. I hit at Sugu, but we have a bolt. I think top is actually fine. Oh, well, Dash Ragavan clears the iteration, but they can't cast it unless they draw a land, and they already had the Ragavan. So now we have counterspells for their first two relevant draws. And I think at this point, if they like cast Leyline of the Void, we are not counterspelling that. So we already have enough juice to play a Murktide. I'd rather just invalidate, or like have their next two draw steps be dead. I guess casting Express Iteration here is pretty aggressive. We're just like pretty clearly outgrinding them. Okay. Still in no rush. Takanuma? Okay. Getting back Grief. Interesting, because I think that Grief is probably the least likely to be effective here. That we can double spell, or they can't double spell a Grief. So I probably would have gone for like something like Ragavan and then tried to hold it for a little while and pressured the fact that I'm stuck on mana. Like, I'm clearly holding a lot of spells. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Brotherhood's End probably cleans up stuff. A little bit afraid of like a Shieldred maybe, but... Alright, Unholy Heat to hand, play a land is fine. I think that it's like, you don't want to just hold forever until you draw another land either. And I felt like we just have a lot of really good hits. Let's keep iterating. Scolding to hand. Exile Heat, so they feel like end step flash Bowmaster, I guess. Alright, I'll wait a turn on this next iteration. Maybe I was supposed to wait a turn on that previous one, but... Do I actually need to even counter this? It's a good question. I think it's still good to counter. Well, I guess I'm a little bit afraid of Grief. Because I'd like to save the counterspell to protect my Murktide, is my thought now. I think, do we know about a fatal push or no? We do not. Okay. Interesting. Now I expect that they're not going to attack with both 1/1s, so I'm okay slow playing this a little bit more, see if we can get a bit more value off the Brotherhood's end, and boom. Now we'll get to clean up a Dothy as well. We're going to wait on the Murktide again. I really think it's important to play it with counterspell protection. This does expose if they Thoughtseize us. We probably might want to counterspell the Thoughtseize, but we don't even have to do that. Okay, and we pick up the match. Nice. So overall, 2-1 in matches against Scam. I do think with the Shredder plan, we're pretty resilient to Leyline of the Void. There were a couple games there where we just did not need Murktide at all. But on the other hand, when they don't have Leyline, Murktide is always going to threaten to be a really big problem, even when they have the 3 Molten Collapse as terminates. You saw every Thoughtseize basically went towards a Murktide Regent. We lost the game where we got scammed on turn 1 on the draw, and that's bound to happen. It is a place where Subtlety would have been really nice to have, so a cost of my list not having Subtlety in it is definitely that, and we'll have to keep thinking about that. I'm not sure. I'm lower on Subtlety than previous, but it could still be a card that warrants a copy or 2 in the main deck, so I'll keep thinking about that. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys learned something from these games or took something away from them. Thanks. Bye.